coming fresh off the boat from the tropical Isle of St. Thomas. Where's that? Who's that? That's Emile Griffin, the maker of hats.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation surrounded by this beautiful group of people that were all part of our production of 2016 Champion. And we are thrilled to know that, and well, we're thrilled to tell you that we will be streaming. It will go live on SFJAZZ platform on Wednesday, the 21st of October for 5 days. So I hope you'll join us in watching the streaming again. But today we have a privilege of having many of the artists that participated in this project, and that so that we can have a real conversation around the way opera's aesthetic can speak to modern audiences, and the relationship between opera and social consciousness. I think this opera is perfect for this conversation. And for this, we've asked Michael Mohammed, a good friend of Opera Parallèle, who is, of course, very well known as a director, a choreographer, a performer. He's actually the director of the musical theater ensemble at San Francisco Conservatory of Music. But one of the things that perhaps not everyone knows is that Michael is also a great scholar. And his work looks at the representation of persons with marginalized identities in opera and theater. And so we thought, and Michael was one of those dancers during Champion, dancing behind Kenneth and giving him his hat and doing all of this. You would have never known he was the scholar. And so he's taken off his dancing shoes today so that he can just ask us questions and engage us in this wonderful conversation. So thank you, Michael, for joining, and thank you all for being here with us. Michael.
All right, thank you, Nicole. So what I'm going to do first is go around. I'll call you by name, and then I'll ask you to just introduce yourself just quickly. And also, I want, because we have some fabulous jazz and opera people on this conversation, and I'm going to ask you, what is making you excited about opera or jazz right now in this moment that we're in? And I'd love to start with Karen.
Hello, it's good to see everyone. I didn't get a chance to say hi to Arthur. It's been a little bit since I saw him, so it's nice to see everybody. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I went to the Curtis Institute of Music. I am also a former Adler of San Francisco Opera. And what is making me excited about opera right now is that I think everyone is absolutely determined not to go backward. Either it is out of necessity, desperation, moment of time, or just people who have been wanting this change for very long, but because of how the system and the cruise ship that I call the genre of opera, it's very difficult to turn the big ship, you know? And so not only just diversity of composers, but also diversity of stories is making me very excited. I keep hearing from many general directors that they're getting flooded with amazing, exciting projects. And, you know, everyone says, well, where were these stories 10 years ago? And I'm like, well, you guys weren't paying attention 10 years ago. So there you go. So that's what's making me excited, is what I hope that, you know, in 2 seasons we'll be able to see on the stage.
Thank you. And I'd love to go to Arthur next, please.
Hi, I'm Arthur Woodley. I'm out here right now in Montclair, New Jersey. And what is making me excited about this period? Actually, I kind of think that when I think back a few years ago, I think about this period of time as a period of fermentation, as a time when I think composers, playwrights, all of these people were looking around to see what is there, what else can we write about, what else can we bring, what else can we bring to the table. And so I think that period before this was the period of fermentation. And I think now we're seeing the seeds of all of these seeds that are germinating. And we're seeing the products, the products of all of those thoughts and all of those things that make all of us who we are and what we are. Because that's where really what we're exploring. We're exploring more than at any other time. We're exploring ourselves. We're exploring our color, our beings. Who are we really? And I think this is just coming to the forefront. And we are composers, playwrights, all of these people are now expressing that, and it's starting to blossom. And that's what makes me excited about the business at this point.
Thank you. Marcus.
How you doing? Good to see everyone. And I'm very thankful for the experience I had with Champion because it was the first time I got an opportunity as a musician who's been mainly involved in blues and swing and this history to perform on the stage with a chamber orchestra and to play the music of someone who I've followed since I started playing, Terrence Blanchard. That was a big thrill, a career highlight for sure, and working with Nicole and everybody at Opera Parallèle. What's making me excited right now is based really on a quote that Nina Simone gave back in the 60s, and I'll read it. It's, an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. I think that is true of painters, sculptors, poets, musicians. As far as I'm concerned, it's their choice, but I choose to reflect the times and situations in which I find myself. That to me is my duty. And I think that speaks not only to artists, but also presenters, an extension of that idea. And I think this is a fertile time. As Arthur mentioned, there's a fertile time to actually reflect and come out of this pandemic, come out of this sheltering in and no performances, a better artist, a better presenting organization, all of these things that this time has allowed us to reflect on. And as Karen said, include more stories, include more artistry. And so I think that's everything that's kind of consistent with Nina, reflecting on the times. We're in some very fertile times to write about, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's protests against racial injustice. We got an election coming up. We've had all these different things that have happened just this year, and that excites me because it gives us a way to reflect. Opera, jazz, other forms of music, I think, is where we can step into that space.
Thank you so much. Kenneth.
Everything that everyone else said, of course. But I was shocked. Like, my system went into shock at first when we all had to just stop. But in that silence and in that that immediate stop, I found so much more of myself. And I think right now there are no rules. COVID forced us to search ourselves. And I'm seeing more creativity, being brought to the surface than I ever have before. When we were working, being creative, more creativity is being pulled from us as artists. And I'm really appreciative of having to dig deep to make it work in times where it seems difficult because we're not on the rat wheel, we're not doing what we normally do. But I see people and the expression of art deeper now than it was when we were, just running the rat race a couple months ago. So I guess I'm grateful for being forced to be creative.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nicole, what's making you excited right now?
Right now, it's listening to all of you. It definitely is what's making me excited. But I would also say I really agree with Kenneth that what's making me excited is as difficult as this, and I share with you the shock of because I actually had just finished a great project, and I thought this was going to be one of the best year in terms of the operas I had planned, I was hired to do. But in a way, it is the best year, and if you want to look at it this way. I'm learning so much about resilience in myself and in what matters. And I think that once we get through this, I will bring that on the podium. I'll bring that to the scores I choose to do, the artists I choose to work with, the kind of way I want to work. All of this will bloom because of this. So I'm excited that when, it's sometimes going through the tunnels can be a little difficult. You sort of feel you're in a tunnel, but I see a lot of light in there, and I'm excited by the form. And I think it's the great form because we're in a form of storytelling, which, this is one of the best form, collaborative storytelling. What can you say? So.
Thank you. And Randall, last but not least.
So I am, as Nicole said, the artistic director, also the founder of SFJAZZ. So it's from 1983, a little while ago. And what's been, just fascinating to watch and be in the middle of is just how society and culture changes. Marcus, I love the Nina quote because, we present art, we're not artists, and, we feel our role is very much like Nina Simone's, which is we've got to put it on a stage. Is why it took, we were talking before we went live here, Nicole's conversation with us about possibly doing this work. And it was one of those things that literally was instantaneous. Of course we need to do it. I mean, there were a lot of things that aligned for that. One of which was Terrence was already engaged as one of our resident artistic directors at the time. He was part of that. And part of that program that we do is trying to allow artists to express themselves, through their work. And most of it is always, well, at its best, topical. So what I'm excited about now is this idea of sort of reinventing what the paradigm is and who has access to the art, from the artists and the audience, and how it can move forward. One thing that got me very excited, well, in the midst of sort of the good and bad news part, is when the Metropolitan Opera announced that they were going to shut down their upcoming season until that, and all the difficulties in doing that. What was great to see was the first thing they mentioned when they come back, what they're going to do artistically. And it's a Terence Blanchard piece. It's new piece, Fire Shut Up in My Bones, based on the Charles Blow autobiographical novel. And he is the first Black composer to be presented by the Metropolitan Opera. I think 136-year history. So things are changing, and it's really exciting to be part of this and to try to figure out what role we can play with all the great artists that are here in this conversation.
Thank you. I want to bring the next question to Karen to start off. We were all involved with the 2016 production of Champion. Karen, how do you feel the aesthetics of the piece speaks to the issues of today?
The aesthetics of Champion, wow. That's a big question. Well, I mean, the fact that there was this incredible man, Emile Griffin, who could not live his truth, and no matter how much he pulled himself up from where he was, his circumstances, no matter how much success he had, it was still about with whom he loved. And he could not express that openly. And so many people are living that life right now. So many people are living that truth. That's their truth. And so it's something that that is still existent, and it's crazy. And the fact that someone now is trying to turn around rights about, gay marriage and all of these things and trying to go backward. And it's like we're still boxing the same thing, right? Trying to hit this imaginary, ball. And so I think that, I love Champion. As someone who did Fire, I love Champion. I think Champion is, 1A to me. But, that to me, I think that it's a relevant story. Champion will live on, for quite a long time. I guess I answered that question.
Hey, Michael, there was something also musically I wanted to add as far as the aesthetics of it. The fact that Terence Blanchard incorporated, a trio that is not typically part of a opera performance or part of the orchestra. And that speaks to today in a really strong way, because when you start commissioning artists from today, they're going to use musical resources from today. They're going to use, composing techniques and composing ideas and things that are contemporary, formats that are contemporary for today. So that was something, I think that was not only a reflection of the willingness of Opera Parallèle to sort of extend the form, but also the composer who used, his different aesthetics, which are obviously in jazz and in classical, to create this piece. And I thought that's new, it's fresh. I don't know when it's going to happen again. I don't know if Fire uses that technique, but they have a trio in there. Okay, and so. But I think that's an aesthetic that can't be lost on this conversation, is that was something that doesn't always happen. It's happened before in very, specific cases, but this was a critical part of the opera.
I think larger to your point, Marcus, is when we think about opera, we think about this very formal thing, go to the opera house, suit and tie. And allowing Terence, who is a jazz great, to do his thing within the realm of opera. He doesn't call, Champion an opera. He calls it an opera in jazz. But just expanding that box of what we think opera is, Champion is great just in doing that. And in telling the story of Emile Griffin, there's so many stories that don't get told, especially about, Black people, gay Black people period, or gay people period. I mean, the stories just aren't very numerous. And allowing Terence to expand those boxes on the musical front and the content front and perspective front is just, it does amazing things for the field. And I think it can do nothing but expand. His first piece, Fireship of My Bones, is going to be at the Met. It's a shame that it's the first time that a Black composer is going to be at the Met. But, I don't know how many stories outside of Porgy and Bess, stories about Black people have been told at the Met. So I think, I'm talking about this aesthetic of the field expanding and stories being told. I think Terence and Champion are on the forefront of that change that needs to happen in opera.
I think one of the things that always surprised me when I would go back to the piece and everything else is delving back into it and saying, oh my God, how fearless Terence is.
Yeah.
Terence is fearless. I mean, you're going to take an old opera form that has been around for 500 years or whatever and say, I'm writing this piece, I'm writing my piece, I'm writing my music, and putting that out there and just saying, and then telling the artist, have at it. I remember so many times, Ken, you and I were talking about this and you were going, this ain't easy.
Yeah.
This ain't easy. And, but do we remember as well that incredible joy that we had when we incorporated all those styles, Nollies, Calypso, all of those things, when we put all of those styles and things together, and we knew in a sense that this was new, this was fresh, this was revolutionary in a way, and everything else. And, this joy came out of all of us because it was real.
Yeah.
It was real, and it was real for us. It was real for us, and it was real for that audience. It was a new way of an audience to hear something and go, oh my God, this is opera, and it's expanding my realm. So I think that's, that is part of it. The man is fearless.
But with that fearlessness, though, came a certain level of freedom. Like, he trusted the artist. I remember going to him, something like Terence, like, I don't know if I can do that.
Yes.
But, Terence being Terence, coming from that jazz idiom, it's like, do what you feel.
Yes.
That will never happen in any other.
Yes.
It's able to happen in.
Yes.
Yeah. In saying that, it's so true, Kenneth, because remember the boxer, Joe Oric, who was
Yeah.
and we thought this sound is so good. I think we should add it to the orchestra sound, and we should do more with it. And Terrence like, great idea, let's do that. You know, and also looking at the score this weekend, I was looking at so many notes in my score of changing things, talking to Terrence and saying, can we do this? Oh yeah, go for it, go, this is good. Yeah. So just sort of that collaboration of jazz musicians, of giving, and you know, was such a great, created an atmosphere that freed us, I thought. Yeah.
Well, this is the exciting part of the times, you know, this idea of hard boundaries dropping, the idea that you're only working in a jazz idiom, or you're only working in, you know, an opera idiom, and the idea that they can blend and they can change, and you know, this is what's happening in culture, is, you know, people are dropping those harder boundaries as well, and the art hopefully is reflecting this as we move forward. You know, Champion was great to see this whole mix of things, and a message that you know clearly resonated in a lot of communities, and great that we got a chance to present it in San Francisco, a place where, you know, a lot of that social unrest and injustice, you know, is laid out in front of us, and you know, over the years since I've been in San Francisco in the 70s. So this is, you know, a tumultuous time where we hope there's more of this boundary breaking between art forms and people, and you know, hopefully a very positive time. But it to your point, Kenneth, it is hard. You know, all these things where we're all acculturated to be, you know, to be comfortable in a certain way, and to change is a really, really difficult thing, but as rewarding as Arthur said. When you got it, when you nail it, you feel really good. You've worked through something. So
I think that's what acceptance Terrence has. You know, I mean, I'm not a jazz musician, but I imagine the nature of improvisation as letting whatever happen in the moment. And I think he trusted us with his work, and it was an amazing experience.
That is such a good point, because I went up to Terrence when we were doing when he was there that week, because you know, we had that duet, Karen. I just wanted to get some feedback from him, and he's so versed in both forms. You know, he'd done all these films since the early '90s, and of course he's versed in the sort of jazz form. And he looks at me and just, yeah, man, just act like you're accompanying Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
And he was able to kind of allow me to release from trying to be so locked into, I mean, you know, he had the bass line written out, but it, you know, it was written out like a classical bass player might play it. And then he says he was able to sort of translate it to someone who doesn't do that music all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one of the other things about him. He was able to speak all these different languages. Like I don't know, if he walked into the Tower of Babel and got everyone to communicate. So I like that challenge. I think we all were challenged, you know, from our perspectives. I know I had a question for Nicole, like, cause you know, you were having to put all that together.
That's what I do. Yeah, but you know, I think that the thing is that the score you know, because the score has so many, a variety of things, you know, there is still, I mean, Kenneth said it right, the piece is an opera in jazz. It's not a jazz opera. So he, as you say, Marcus, he's versed in opera. He understood what opera was. So you had a foundation, but then he used the jazz as a color, as something to create. So you have the foundation, but what created the colors and the walls and the textures were coming from the jazz element. So this mixture, you felt grounded, but then you had these colors you've never had before. So I remember this, I think it's number 13 in my heart or something. He had in his score, he has really cool ways of explaining what it's not adagio, andante. It's all like dizzy, raucous, you know, parade style, all of these things. And I remember thinking dizzying, and I thought, oh, that is so good. I completely get what he wants from that word dizzying. So just the words that he introduced at the beginning to describe every movement gave you exactly a guidance on where to go. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Terrence is very clear.
Very.
Score, and I go, I know what I want to do. I know what I want to say, and that doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
I want to throw a little bit of where you guys are talking already about this idea of jazz and sort of European art music coming together. And what I would love to know, if Marcus, maybe you want to start us off, especially in context of the duet you had with Karen. How does this type of blended hybrid, however you want to call it, art form, tell the story of the Black experience?
Well, like I said, I got that for the duet. I got it, and I was like, "Wow, this is not written in the language that I speak." And I'm like, "Okay, let me just sort of work with it, break it apart." And I think when I think about the language of Black music, then I go way back just to the sort of this form of communication: work songs, blues shouts, field hollers, spirituals. These were cultural ways that people communicated during slavery, after slavery, the sort of underground or the underpinnings of all American music, rock and roll, hip hop, so all of that stuff. So it doesn't matter what I'm playing or what I'm seeing, I'm still going to bring that understanding to it. And the only reason why I confidently go in that direction, because some of the people who I follow, Louis Armstrong did that, Duke Ellington did that, Nina Simone did that. No matter what music they played or wrote, or they didn't even call it jazz. They didn't use that word for the most part, maybe sometimes, but it was really just from their way that they communicated. Some of that is improvisation, some of that is inflection, some of that is a group dynamic, some of that is an individual solo. Those are all the tools that, I think any musician tries to use. Some don't have that opportunity because they have to read what's written. In our music, we read, we improvise. It's in the moment because we have to respond based on what we hear. And I'm not, Champion didn't have improvisation in it, or it didn't have chord changes where you're supposed to come up with your own. Everything was written, but it was written in the way that we respond. Even some of those pieces that had much of a blues feel to it, even the duet, he wrote it in the way that a single instrument would respond to a single voice. So I just tried to use all the things that I've learned since being in church, playing bass when I was 8, to all the music I've learned outside of the idiom of so-called jazz, to this piece, because I think it was a little bit of everything. I loved, just sometimes when I didn't have to play, just sitting there listening to Arthur, or just, when I didn't have to play, it was just an amazing experience sitting and listening to the music around me.
I'd like to say, Marcus, I missed you so much when we did it in New Orleans. I have to say, baby, I missed you.
Oh man.
I always say far away, and I'm thankful to Denise, Denise Grace, who created the role. I'm thankful to her because she's amazing, and Terrence wrote an amazing piece for her. And I feel so honored every time I get the chance to do it. But Far Away Long Ago was one of the baddest arias in the repertoire. I cannot even front. It was one of the greatest arias in the art form. And what a gift to be able to sing such an expressive, soulful, feminine, vulnerable piece as a woman. I didn't have to try, I didn't have to add anything, I didn't have to be anybody but who I thought Emilda was. And what a gift. And as an artist, as a Black woman, that's all you can ask for on this stage, on this platform. And that's all
I was scared to death. I was scared to death. I'm like,
You were amazed.
Yeah. Well, it was all fear. It was all fear to get it right. I was like, because it was like the one time, right, that I got a chance to go up and bat in that opera, and I wasn't going to strike out with you. No.
For the first rehearsal that we had, and you said, do you think we'll be able to add a lot of rehearsal on this one? I really like, do you think Karen could come to my house and we could work on this?
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Tell you, being a student of opera, you know, you come into rehearsal thinking everything has to be a certain way.
That's so true.
And you know, you Mozart, every note, everything has to be a certain operatic way. And I came into Champion like that. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be all of my P's and Q's, have my technique, everything to be in line. It was that way. And I got there and I realized there's no way I can possibly do this piece that way. And adding that jazz layer onto it allowed me to be me. You know, it allowed me to tap into something that my training kind of trained out of me. It allowed me to tap into this cultural thing that I think we often forget as opera singers. So I think, to answer your question, I think that is a great blend of what jazz does to opera in this piece.
And can I keep on you for a second, Kenneth, because sort of adding with the P's and Q's and what our expectations are as opera performers, opera artists, we got to perform this in the beautiful, amazing SFJAZZ space, which is not an operatic space. So I'm curious how you and the rest of the panel think about how performing a piece like this in a non-traditional space sort of bridges the space between storytellers and storytelling and audience. And I would love also if you could also put that in the context of the alley scene where it wasn't necessarily your identity that you're exploring.
I think for singers, the space doesn't really change how you sing. I think the closeness of the audience definitely, it changes intimacy, it changes your awareness of, you know, what people would see. And like, there's some tricks you would do in the opera house that you can like hide from the audience. With the audience being so close and the intimacy of that space, that you really had to be in character every single moment. So it allowed that intimacy. With the alley scene, that scene for me, that was before I even decided to do the piece. That was the scene I looked at. That was like, you know, okay, can I do this as a person who isn't gay, telling the story of a gay man? Like, how far am I willing to go? How far can I go without ever exploring this part of myself, or having to explore this part of myself, or not even having this part of myself? Like, how can I give myself authentically to this moment and have it be respectful of the story of Emile Griffin, and tell it in a way that, like, I wouldn't be on stage with all of these, you know, these walls and boxes. So I had to get to a place of you know, realizing that it's not about me, and it's about Emile Griffin, and it's telling the story of love and not necessarily this perverse sexuality that we often think of when it comes to homosexuality. So when I got there, it was really a letting go. You know, we've been talking about breaking down boxes. It was really a letting go of my man box, you know, of what masculinity meant, and being willing to put myself in a vulnerable situation with another man. And luckily, you know, Bradley is a friend of my wife, so we were able to talk and, you know, really have genuine conversation about that scene. But it took me a minute to get there, and I think it was probably one of the most intense internal struggles I've had to deal with as an artist, to dive into a role that's foreign from my own everyday.
that being said, it was one of the most gratifying scenes because I really just could let myself go and be there, and allow myself to be used by the art and used by the expression more than having, you know, my personal walls up.
Thank you.
So there was something, you know, if I can jump in, Michael, you know, when Nicole came to me first about the production and whether it would be appropriate in our space. So you know, we built that space in 2013, we opened, and it was designed specifically for this idea of community and expression, that the artist on the stage and the audience could connect together. And everything about, you know, the design aspects of that building were around this. We did not anticipate an opera production for this, and we intentionally moved away from a proscenium stage, you know, what traditionally opera would be presented on. And one of the things that got me excited about it in talking to Nicole initially was the chance of having this idea, you know, particularly Kenneth, when you talk about the intimacy of that scene, was this was a chance for the audience to be right there. And also
Yes.
Parallel to being a boxing ring. You know, things are very exposed in that room. And one of the reasons why I thought that the production, you know, really worked there. I mean, we had lots of doubts whether we could pull this thing off. We had never done a pit orchestra. We had never had sets. We had never, I mean, there were lots of things. It was supposed to be this kind of raw connection between an artist, you know, doing their thing and the audience. So to have it amplified and how beautifully, you know, Brian and all of Opera Parallel, how they realized this piece to bring out these scenes, which I thought just played so beautifully, you know, there. And, you know, again, part of this boundary breaking down, you know, does opera have to be done in a proscenium stage? You know, how can it be presented? And so that was to me, one of the most gratifying parts about this production, and you know, I mean, really satisfying to see how well this translated. And it felt like you were like, you know, there was a sense of intimacy. You know, I'm not a huge opera goer, but, you know, for the times that I've seen operas, you know, at the Opera House here in San Francisco, it always feels like I'm watching something. This, I felt like I was right in the middle of it. You know, the performance, the music, every part, how all of you realize this piece. So I think that was an interesting part of this production that was part of what made it special, and you know, the intimacy piece of it.
I wanted to chime in on that. Someone who's played at SFJAZZ since they opened, and just being part of this production, it was the most unique production I've ever been in. I'm not even sure if something like that can be replicated the same way in another building like that. It felt like we were at in a boxing ring at times. The whole way that the audience was able to engage. I want to sing Brian's praises for the design. It was incredible. It was just incredible. The design of this production was incredible. And, you know, I've done a lot of different performances at SFJAZZ where we were on a stage. This is the first time we did something without a stage, but being kind of in a created pit, but we were still visible, which was beautiful. So that the uniqueness of the environment is what made this really, I mean, this could go many places. It has. New Orleans was in St. Louis. It was in Washington, D.C. I'm sure those were amazing productions, but this was so much. This was so unique because of SFJAZZ's building, and I just, that is a memory I'll never forget. Just because of all of the extensions of it, that made it a pleasure to play. And work with all of the talent that were part of this.
Yeah, and those levels, like every level felt like a different place. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember, like, the top level was office spot. We didn't go to that spot, but every level you went to, you felt like you were transitioning to a different space and piece, and it was used absolutely masterfully.
I was talking when we were looking at the video this weekend to prepare for the streaming. We were talking about the design, and Brian was explaining. I had forgotten that not only is it the boxing ring, but the fact that it had different levels, as you're saying, Kenneth, was was a metaphor for old Emile's brain breaking into, and so there was a metaphor of his mind, and that's why he was on the top and always there, because he was sort of prisoner of his mind, boxed into his mind and his cracked mind on that. So it represented the ring and the mind of Arthur, which I thought, we couldn't do that in a lot of places, but that worked out very well. I have to say also that I remember that I had a fear that perhaps opera singer, as you say, Kenneth, you're used to working in a specific way. I remember going early there to have you guys sing in the space. So because it's a drier space than an opera house would be used. And all of you were so cooperative. Oh, we'll be fine with this. There was no one saying, I'm not sure this is going to work for my vocal technique. And I just felt that again, that there was this feeling of, freeing up. Yes, of course this will work. And, no one mentioning, oh, the orchestra is not in a pit. Will I be heard on stage? All of these things were just naturally, we all sort of swam with them in a beautiful way. So that's a good congratulations on that.
And I do want to just throw in that we reporters did go to the top level of the space and we ran like the Dickens to get up there. We sang from one place, ran upstairs. I'd love to throw this next question at the legendary Arthur Woodley, who has sung in all stages around the world. This opera explores the barriers and experiences of Emile Griffin, especially in what we would now call his intersectional identities, because it talks about race, it talks about ethnicity, challenges of age, his sexuality, his status as a celebrity. I'd love to know your experiences and barriers as an elite opera performer in the same, maybe similarly as Emile as an elite athlete.
Wow. I tell you, looking back now, not being, let's say, in the beginning of a career, in the middle of a career or anything else, looking back at that journey that you take, looking back at the pinnacle, the lows, the highs, the very bottom that you think, oh Lord, it can't get any worse than this. But still with a hunger and a desire to fulfill something within oneself. To fulfill, it's more than a dream after a while. There was a film called The Hunger. And to go towards that always, even at the lowest point, is a fulfillment. It's a passage. It's a voyage that one must take. And as hard as it is, every time you step on that stage, every single time that I walked on that stage, I realized what I had gone through. I realized that the steps that I had taken, or my family had taken, my wife, even my kids, all of those things. So you walk on firmly. You take the steps onto that stage firmly because you know from whence you came and what you did and how hard you worked to get this. You have to have the passion. Yes, you have to have the mind for it and everything else. But I think what we as artists must always remember is that each and every one of us goes through those kinds of passages in which we think to ourselves, this will never happen. Am I good enough? Am I worthy of this? So now you get to a character like Emile Griffin. So Emile Griffin, in essence, is that same kind of a person. He comes from a foreign place. What is America about? What is this place about? I've got my little Pan Am ticket in my hand here. And, what is this culture about? I'm a nobody, and then I become somebody. But even as Emile became somebody, there was a humbleness to him. Put aside the fact, the hidden part of him at that point. But there is within him still this childlike quality. Like when he jumps into the arms of his trainer when he wins and everything else, this childlike quality and everything else. So Emile always made me think that he knew where he was coming from. And he knew what he had to do. Those bricks above my head, all of those things that I had, those are the things that informed him. So he had a hunger. It's the hunger that we as artists must have, and we must carry on. Like Marcus, exploring himself, exploring his culture, exploring his history. These are the things that we need to do and we need to hold on to. And those are the things that informed me. I will tell you that every single time I walked on that stage, every single time I took the first shuffling step to go on that stage, I thought of my family. I thought of the fact that he was from St. Thomas and I'm from St. Croix, and that I walked with my shoes in my hands, and that I had a Pan Am ticket to come up to this country as well. So I was deeply in that form. And by the time that music, that da-da-da-da, I was in. I was done. I was in that man. I don't know when Emile stopped, except when the music stopped.
Mm.
From the very beginning, I knew what he was about. I knew that feeling, that hunger that he had and everything else. So it just took over. And that's the glory of the steps that you take to get there. That's the glory of all the times that you doubt yourself, the times you turn to your wife and you go, oh man, why are we doing this? Those steps, those little steps are what informs you and allows you to do what we do. All of us, every single one of us, wherever we come from, however we came here, however we're here, that's what gets us. That's what brings us, this hunger to do and to express. And we have to keep that and hold on to that. And that's what informs me. I hope I answered the question.
Doesn't matter when you preach. Hey, Marcus, how do you bring your own story to the art you're making?
Oh, wow. I try to do that every time based on historical perspectives. I've spent most of my career trying to create pieces about the history of Black people in this country, whether it's like Dr. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, or Blues Legacies and Black Feminism, which is based on a book by Dr. Angela Davis, Harriet Tubman's story, the prison industrial complex, Negro League baseball. These are stories that I've spent my last 20 years researching, Port Chicago, different aspects of my history, and even currently what's happening now in this Black Lives Matter movement and the music that surrounds that and the issues. Before we got on the line, we were talking about Portland and how Portland has become this era's almost Birmingham, or Selma, or there's things going on there. There's things going on in Kentucky. There's things going on in Minnesota, and so these are things that I'm concerned with, that I'm interested in, and that music has a part in messaging. So it's really communal. It's not so much personal as it is those that affect my community and those that include the allies in my community. And so that's my personal use of music on every level, at every time, whether it's education or performing in a piece like Opera Parallèle. Now, I will say this, that experience, and because of that experience, I've been in inspired to create music with that form. And I'm very thankful for Opera Parallèle. We've been working for the last 3 years on a piece about Harriet Tubman, a children's opera called Harriet's Spirit. I've been knee deep in orchestration now. We did our first sort of workshop 2 years ago, went really successful. We're on our second step now where we're going to have a small chamber orchestra. And we're talking about Harriet Tubman through the eyes of children on a playground, and how she's channeled. So that's not a personal story, but it's a story that is an extension of my community, and I'm just as interested in that as it would be if it was just about something personal.
Thank you. Karen, how do you bring your story to your industry?
Wow, my story, my life, you mean?
Yeah, how do you bring your story into your industry?
I think I am the kind of artist that you can't separate the two ever. What I say, how I am, how I sing is all me, and it goes into everything that I do. I don't know how to make music any other way. I don't know how to sing any other way. I don't know how to be on stage any other way. I am very proud to be a woman, very proud to be a Black woman, very proud to be a Black woman who sings opera, very proud to be a Black woman who is extremely gifted in every, and totally committed into everything that I do. And so I think people know when they get me, they're getting the full package.
All right.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Kiki, yep.
Ah,
Kenneth, what can be done to allow opera to be relevant to contemporary life?
Oh man, I knew I was gonna get that question. I know. I mean, I think the easiest thing is to tell authentic stories. I mean, I think we live in an idiom that's antiquated. I mean, a lot of the operas that we do spoke to a certain time. I think if we're going to do those operas, we have to allow them and be creative enough and bold enough to make them speak to our time. And we have to write new operas. We have to tell more stories that matter to more people. I think that's the only way to remain relevant, and to build the audience that we need to get. New voices need to be heard, more voices need to be heard and respected and told from a perspective of authenticity. Yeah, I mean, I think once you start there, the creativity grows, the audiences grow, perspectives are respected and heard, and people can see themselves represented on stage in a way that encourages them to come as opposed to discourages them from coming. That's the easiest way, and allowing people to find themselves in the art. Opera is often I can't see myself there. I don't know much about it. I don't sing Italian. I don't know German. I don't know. We have to let opera inform in a way that there is a knowing and a respect. I think the art has to respect people before people can ever respect the art.
All right. Arthur,
yeah.
how can art bolster social consciousness?
But I think we as human beings have these faculties. We have sight, we have, hearing. We have all of those, those faculties that we use when we go to experience something new. So I think what we have to do is we need to make these things relevant to the lives of the people that are sitting in the audiences. We also need to give them the spices to flavor things so that, there is added flavor to whatever we think opera is supposed to be, or whatever whatever we're looking at and listening to. So I think, you know, as Brian did, where you in essence use all of these different levels, all of these different sounds, the boxing, the sound of the boxer and all of these other things. I think what you're giving people is this sense of is what someone said, you're surrounded. And I think that's the added thing that we see now, that we're more or less surrounded by this sound and these feelings and these whatever else that we can conjure up in our minds, you know. So I think that kind of I think that's about it. That's as good as I can think of right now. Yeah.
It's pretty good. So we just have a few minutes left. So I want to do one more round robin. And just thinking about and we'll go in the same order we started with. So Karen, get ready. I want us to think about these topics we've talked about. And I want to know, what is one question that you have found yourself asking? And what is a version of an answer that you're living your way into? Take it away, Karen, whenever you're ready.
So,
Can you say that again?
What is a question that you find yourself asking over and over again? And what is a way, a tactic, a strategy that you're finding yourself living your way into, trying to answer for yourself?
In this time period?
In this time period, and along whatever these topics we've talked about today.
Well, since I've acquired a new job and always being the person who's asking other people questions, I found myself less and less involved in what I'm thinking and more involved about what other people are thinking, they're feeling, you know. And that could be a part of my self-care that I need to start doing, you know, and taking the time in this COVID time. What I'm asking myself over and over again is, am I going to make the right decisions, not just for the moment, but for the future? You know, like, am I making the right choice? Am I making the right decisions? Am I doing the right things? You know, yeah, that's where I am now. But also, you know, are other people okay? You know, are you the desire to want to people to be okay as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. Arthur?
I don't, you know, questions. Where am I going? What am I doing? How can it be better? What more can I do? Those are the questions that I have, you know, that I ask of myself. You know, those are the things I want to know about. And more than anything else, you know, is everyone all right? And if they're not, how can you do something to help? Can you do something? Those are the things I think about at this point.
I think one of the biggest that I'm constantly asking myself and challenging, you know, of people is, you know, where are we as artists? You know, how much are our contributions valued in the art that we make? I listen to a lot of really amazing artists who feel like they don't have control over their artistry, and we're constantly, artist nature is to give of our talents and of our art. I just had a conversation with, you know, one of the top musicians I've ever worked with, and there was questions about, like, what can I say? Like, after I put my piece out there, how much control do I have over it? Like, do I have any control over it? And we often lose that. We often lose the work that we put out as artists. So my question is always late has been, like, how do we take some control and ownership of the things that we create, and, you know, all the pride and stuff we put into a piece. after it's out there, should we say, I'm creating and putting so much blood and sweat and tears into a role, and then it's all of a sudden taken away because the industry has moved on to the next thing. But there's so much of ourselves as artists that go into these pieces. We are attached. We're attached like it's an umbilical cord, and to have it disregarded, have our contributions almost disregarded, is a big issue for me. So I'm constantly challenging organizations. Some of them probably hate me for it, but I'm challenging organizations to ask the question of themselves of how much an artist's contribution means to them. And if we don't value our artists, then are we really valuing our organizations?
Yeah.
Marcus?
Oh, okay, cool. Mine is simple. I'll keep mine quick. I wake up every day asking myself, am I having a positive impact on my community? And if I'm not doing something to build towards that, then I'm not. Because if I'm not building, then I'm destroying. And so some of that is part of the work that I'm involved in artistically. Some of it is just the work that I do outside of this music, which is with youth, with the incarcerated, senior citizens, all of those different things. That's a daily thing. Where I am now at the age of 54 and until I die, am I making a positive impact on my community and on every level? That's the question I ask. That's the first question I ask when I wake up. And if I'm not, because I'm being lazy or I'm not trying hard enough, then I'm not. And I have to answer my own conscience for that. So, you know, and some of it is the type of music or projects I'm involved in, and some of it's more specific to the needs of our community. So, and then part of that is me being prepared, being capable, and growing. There's nothing stronger than role models. I'm doing this because I saw someone do it that I was like, that's what I want to do, and it was positive. You know, I saw Wynton Marsalis play in 1988. That changed my life. You know, I was doing something totally different, and the image was so strong. You know, you never know when someone's looking at you. You never know when someone is absorbing everything you do. You know, I have a new position now at Hillsburg Jazz as artistic director. Randall doesn't know, but I've been absorbing everything he's been doing for 25 years. I've been following the way he has created this wonderful, one of the best festivals in the world, San Francisco Jazz Festival, ever. And so you never know when someone's looking at you and influenced by you, how you talk, how you treat other people, how you handle your personal business. You know, no one's perfect. We're going to fail, but how do you grow? And so I think mine is just really that simple.
Great. Randall?
So I'm in a slightly different position here. You all are artists, and
Sorry.
and always, you know, on call as artists. But it's, you know, who you are is expressed in your art. It's a different thing. I'm an arts administrator, very different kind of thing. And so the question, you know, the question I'm asking myself is, you know, is all about relevance and responsiveness. In other words, to be a good arts presenter, you know, to be, you know, what are we relevant in our society? Are we relevant in our communities? And it's a hard question to always deal with, but it's the most important question. I think of anything that sort of shaped this organization is trying to keep that question always at the forefront. I mean, it goes back to the Nina Simone quote again, you know, from Marcus earlier. You know, it's a commitment to trying to be able to be in service to your community. So, you know, the second part of your question, Michael, is the hardest one. You know, what version of an answer, you know, are you finding your way into? And it's just not an easy answer to that part of it, because time will tell. How our community will tell us if we're doing a good job or we're not. Our artists, we're in this really interesting position. We have to, in COVID, we are down. We're a big employer of artists. How does we keep that community? What can we do to encourage that community to be vibrant in a time when it's most challenged? And we have to keep our audiences, this is a sort of ecosystem we work in, where our role is to bring the art to the stage and serve artists and serve our communities at the same time. So I don't have an answer for the second part of it. It's just, just continuing to try to understand who you all are better, understand what our community wants, and it tells us to do, basically, more than anything. Responsiveness, as I said. So relevance, responsiveness.
And Nicole.
Well, everyone has said pretty much, I think. I mean, especially Marcus, what you said is so sort of resonate with me, and sort of every morning waking up and, wondering if I'm doing enough, if the fact that I'm an artist is enough to what the world needs right now. And in some ways, just because the question is kind of relating us to champion, sometimes I ask myself, where are my shoes? What shoes should I walk in to make this world a better place in that way? For those of you listening, this is the theme that Arthur sings at the beginning of the opera. But there is that question of that. And I agree with Randall that the difficult question is the answer to that. But I do think having the capacity to be authentic and to really be who you are and really listen to yourself and not try to be what, it seems that you should be, is something that in these times right now, there is, being honest and authentic and open is so important. So all of these things are questions I ask, but figuring out what shoes to walk in, walk with them is a good question that this opera is asking all of us. So another relevant.
Really,
yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
Well, thank you all. I think this was a wonderful conversation. I think we're adding to these conversations that we've been having in quarantine, also leading into this great production of Champion, and what we all of artists bring to not just to the production but to the table, and what we're offering everyone. I've been talking about radical empathy as being just a very deep basis of what we do as artists. And I think you all have shown us a great deal of radical empathy today. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all for joining us. And
a pleasure, an honor.
When we go live on Wednesday.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.